second.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson, and today is Tuesday, May the 18th, 2021, and that means that we are just in time for another episode of OTP Tuesdays. Before we get into it, I know what I said in the last podcast. I got reminded of what I said in the last podcast 87 times this weekend. I am sorry. Every Tuesday, OTP Tuesdays, On the Pipe Podcast. We're back in your life. We're going to talk about the off-road racing world and everything going on with it. We're coming off of a national Enduro weekend where we saw round 3 of the 2021 campaign. We were up in Arrington, Virginia for the Dragon's Back National Enduro. So we're going to go into depth about that, talk about that and what's going on there, and probably cover some other topics along the way. So, once again, as always, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for clicking this episode, listening to it wherever you may be listening to it at. If you're listening to it on Apple Podcast or Stitcher or Spotify or YouTube or anywhere that you like to get your podcast, I appreciate you choosing this one to listen to, and I appreciate you letting me come into your life here for the next little bit as we catch up in the world of off-road racing. As always, be a friend, tell a friend. If you like the show, if you like what we're doing over here, you like what's going on, let your buddy know. Send them the show, let them know how to listen, so that way, when my slack tail goes a week without doing a podcast, I have even more people coming up and calling me out at the races. I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. Like I said in the last one, I'm not going to make excuses. I could tell you what was going on, but you don't care. You don't want to hear it. I went back and listened to these episodes from several months ago where I talked about it last year. I didn't even want to hear myself talk about it. So I'll spare you that and just say going forward, we are locked, we're loaded, we're dialed in. We got some shows lined up that I'll be recording this week, talking to some people and getting some riders back on the show. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I just got my puppy, got a brand new puppy yesterday. So yesterday was Monday, went and picked her up. So she is actually passed out on the couch next to me, sleeping on my lap. So if you hear some rustling and some rumbling, that's her waking up. Right now she's calm, she's sleeping. So hopefully that will continue. But want to start things off a little bit of sad news. Hate to start the show off this way, but we have learned here recently that the longtime president of the NCHSA organization, that's the North Carolina Hare Scramble Association, Alan Champion, actually passed away on Monday. So no doubt that is a heavy hit to the off-road world. He has been the president of those North Carolina Hare Scrambles for quite some time now. He's a very respected, very loved, and very well-known person in the area. So anyone that has been around North Carolina knows of the North Carolina series and knows of Alan Champion. So very sad to hear that. So just keeping Caroline Champion and Ryan Champion in our thoughts and prayers and sending those out with them. Definitely not the news that we like to see and hate when we have to report on things like this, but yeah, just wanted to start things off by saying that they'll actually be doing a celebration of life this weekend at Lost Valley Motorsports. So I know there's a GNCC coming up this weekend. If you're not going to be there, maybe you're in the North Carolina area, Lost Valley is going to be holding a ride day. So it'll be 2 to 5 p.m., and I believe it's going to be on Sunday. So Sunday at Lost Valley in Connolly Springs, they'll be doing a ride day in memory of Alan champion. So cool they were able to put that together, but no doubt very sad news coming out of the NCHSA organization. So yeah, just wanted to start things off there. But like I said, we do have a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on in the off-road world. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to our good friends over at Armored Graphics. Armored Graphics is the one-stop shop for all of your graphics needs, no matter what you ride. If you check out their website, if you got something weird that isn't on there, get a hold of them. They'll probably make something for it. They've gotten me dialed in on all of my bikes, a lot of friends' bikes, and they actually used to do the JGR factory Suzuki bikes back in the day. They did those the last several years, so you see those JGR graphics changing up quite a bit from race to race. They are the ones with the plans. That was Armored Graphics behind all that, the Vegas kits, the American kits, just kind of changing things up and keeping it interesting. They also did Ricky Carmichael's kits before. They do Ricky Carmichael's kits now. Used to be heavily involved in the woods world. They're sponsoring the local series and getting back out there now. So no doubt top-notch quality product, top-notch quality people. You can check them out, armoredgraphics.com or at Armored Graphics on social media. And then, once again, as always, want to give a huge thank you to our buddies over at Ichthus CBD. We've talked about them in the past. I've gotten some of their products. I've used them extensively, especially over race weekends like we just had at the National Enduro. I'm going to get into it here in a minute. Logan Densmore, he's one of the ones that helps out. Josh Carl, he helps out too. Alan Rant, Mark Hyde. Throughout the week, we put in a lot of miles on these bikes. I never knew how many miles on the bikes. I just kind of assumed it was a lot. You got to think, you got 65 miles of trail, sometimes more, but usually right around that 65 miles of trail mark. When we get there on Thursdays, and they've been doing this for years, I'm just getting my feet wet and learning the ropes right now, if you will. You get there, the first order of business is to go ride the trails. So you're checking for the flow of the trails, you're checking for arrows, you're checking for places where people might get lost, and then putting up some ribbon, putting up some wrong ways, maybe adding some arrows in some sections, maybe changing a section here and there. Louisiana, we ended up having to change a lot of sections due to the rain that came in right before the race happened. Long story short, you're riding the trails, you're checking for things, but that means you have to cover every single ounce of that trail. And then Friday, we're going back and we're just double checking things again. We're looking for spots where we can bring our camera crews to have people out there taking videos, taking photos, doing all that kind of stuff. And then we're also finding the shortcuts between the tests. So there's a scoring system at the beginning and the end of each of the 6 tests. And that stuff has to be set up. It has to be running. It has to be working. We have to know where it's at. So we're finding the short ways to get from the pits or where everybody's parked to each specific location. So 6 tests, 2 on each test. That's 12 different locations. So a lot of times it's trial and error, kind of going out, finding a ways, riding existing trails, riding the track, and finding out where these scoring systems are. So kind of going out, exploring, doing that, putting up arrows for the gas stop so people that are in chase vehicles, they know where to go to meet their riders and get some support. Long story short, there's a lot of riding going on. And then Sunday, you got people going out, setting up the checks at each thing at the ins and outs of each test. Then you got people going out making sure those are working. You got people going out filming. There's all sorts of stuff going on. What I'm getting at is there is a lot of miles that are ridden during these things, and the reason I brought up Logan along with everybody else that helps out is he actually posted a picture of his odometer for the weekend, and it said 172 miles. Now, of course, everyone's on their own bikes, everyone's doing their own things, everyone splits up and does separate things, but 172 miles from Thursday to Sunday in one race weekend, that's how many miles were on his bike. Now, some are riding a little bit more, some are riding a little bit less. That all goes to say how much work goes into these events. The property that we were at this past weekend was 4,800 acres. 4,800 acres. Now, a lot of times these national enduros are spanning across multiple pieces of property, because when you're talking about 65 miles of racetrack, it's not too often that you have one piece of property that's 4,800 acres that you can put all of that track on one location. So a lot of times you're going in and out of other people's property and going on public lands, and the clubs are kind of organizing that and getting the right to access all of it. But the point is these things span out a very long way, and to be able to lay out a racetrack on that and be able to do everything that we need to do on those racetracks is nothing short of incredible. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Now, I kind of went on a long-winded rant right there, and you're probably wondering what in the hell for. It brings me back to our good buddies over at Ichthus CBD. When you're putting in miles and miles and miles on the bikes every day, and that's not including setting things up at the tent, carrying stuff around, moving stuff around, setting up the podium, setting up the sponsor stuff, laying out the parking area, putting up the flags, putting up the tents on the rig. There's a lot of stuff that goes into these races, and it's enough to break your body down over the course of the weekend. That's where our good buddies over at Ichthus CBD come in. It's crazy to see how much and how beneficial, I guess how much it helps and how beneficial it can be to use Ichthus CBD products. Now, they help inflammation, they can help with anxiety, they can help with sleep, they can help with energy, just depending on what you take and how you're taking it. There's a lot of positive benefits that you can get from Ichthus CBD. And we live in a world right now, it seems like the two biggest things are craft beer and CBD. They're popping up left and right. That being said, you got some quality stuff and you got some not quality stuff. So I invite you to go to ichthuscbd.com, read the testimonials on there, read the research on there, read the science on there. It all started out with the owner trying to find a way to combat a disease that he had within himself. And so he went, did the research, and found the science and developed Ichthus CBD into what it is now, to make sure that it is something that can work, and it is something that does work, and it is something that can benefit you. And with that being said, there's all sorts of information on their website. And it's not just about Ichthus CBD, it's about CBD in general, what it can do for you, how it's made, what goes into it. But more importantly, they inform you how to spot the phonies, so how to spot bad fake CBD, and then also goes through the things of what their CBD goes through to make it different from the rest, which I think is really cool. I've actually learned a lot from it, both while using the products and then also reading on the website, researching those products. It's pretty cool to see, and it's pretty cool the science behind it, and it's even cooler when you see something like that work. Now, I don't want to get into another long-winded rant, but ibuprofen, I've had trouble in the past with, just from surgeries. I've broken a ton of bones growing up skateboarding and then wrestling and then getting into dirt bikes and training MMA and everything back in the day. Injuries have been a part of my life. It is what it is, and people that have been riding dirt bikes, and a lot of people listening to this, I'm sure you can attest to it and say the same thing, that injuries have been a part of your life too. What I noticed is I got to a point where ibuprofen actually made everything hurt worse in my body, and come to find out that ibuprofen can actually break down the layer of mucus inside of your gut, which actually creates inflammation in your stomach, which then your body pulls resources from other parts of your body to fight that inflammation in your stomach, which actually causes more inflammation in your joints or in your problem areas where you're trying to get it to subside at. And the reason I bring that up is because CBD doesn't break down that liner in your gut, and there's a lot of measurable health data that can show why CBD works. But I don't want to talk about it. I just want to go too far into depth about it. Just want to throw that out there for you guys, and like I said, give a shout out to our buddies over at Ichthus CBD. They also have a 100% money back guarantee. So if you have heard all about CBD and you've always wondered if it'll work, go on their website, read about it, see if it's something that would work for you. Check out their products. You can try them out. If it's over $60, you get free shipping. And if you don't like it, send it back. He'll give you your money back, no questions asked. Well, there might be some questions. You might want to know what happened. I guess I should have thought about that before I mentioned that. Anyway, there is a 100% money back guarantee if you do want to try it out. And the other cool thing about Ichthus is they sponsor so many people in our sport. You'll hear me say time and time again, support the people that support the sport that we all know and love. And if you have made it so far as to listening to my voice talk about dirt bikes on a random podcast that I am recording with a dog in my lap in my living room at my coffee table, then you love this sport too. I think it's pretty safe to say that. You don't stumble across On the Pipe podcast. This is a destination podcast. So they support the sport that we all know and love. They support a lot of riders in the sport, and that's why we don't have a discount code, because I don't want to take that discount code from the athletes that are out there riding and racing that Ichthus is supporting. So they're the title sponsor for Freddie Norn, who's been racing Supercross, and he'll be racing motocross. They sponsor Rachel Archer. They sponsor a lot of different riders from the pro level all the way down to the amateur level, from motocross, Supercross, people that race GNCCs only, national enduros, all of that. So go check them out. Check our page out. You can find a link to Ichthus on there, and you can see all the riders that they support, and each and every one of those riders are going to have their own discount code. So I invite you to kind of go look through those and use one of those riders' discount codes, so that way they can see that we're pushing some Ichthus out there, because it really does work. And if you haven't tried it, you could be surprised at how much it does help you out. Anywho, let's get right into it. This past weekend, as we mentioned, Arrington, Virginia, it was round 3, the Dragons Back National Enduro. Now, the one thing that I heard all weekend long is everyone was super stoked to be back. We've raced there a few times in the past. I think the last time National Enduro was there was 2018. Everyone loves it. Now, from the beginning of the weekend, obviously, riding the trails on Thursday, we're kind of the first ones to get to see it outside of the club members. And I'm sitting there thinking the whole time, like, man, what a racetrack. That place flowed really well. It was good, fast-flowing trails. You dive into a section where it maybe had some tight stuff for a little bit. Then you come back out. There were some field sections thrown in. There were a couple creek crossings. But we can't tell anybody about the creek crossings, because you may or may not be allowed to be in the creek. So if you're with the EPA right now, there was no creek crossings at all. But no, there's just some really cool terrain there. There was also a transfer section that is the Dragons Back. It's called the Dragons Back National Enduro. That's where it gets its namesake from. So it's a really cool, super rocky, pretty technical uphill climb. You get to the top, there's an overlook. I'm sure if you were on Instagram or anywhere scrolling throughout the weekend, you saw some views of that overlook up there. On the NEPG Enduro page, I actually put some riding clips out on there, so if you saw the pre-ride video, you got to see some of that in there. I got some drone shots that made the cut, so you were able to see the Dragons Back. That's where we're riding up the ridge and everything right there. So it's a really cool place, really cool location. It hadn't rained in a while, so it was a little bit dry. It ended up raining on race day, which made the track come together very well, in my opinion. But what I'm getting at is this is one of the first race tracks, not first National Enduro. I mean, I'm talking about GNCCs, motocross, sprint enduros of the past, anything. This is one of the first race tracks where I haven't seen or heard a single negative thing. That almost never happens. We're in 2021 where everyone complains about everything. This is one of the first places and first tracks, first events that it's all been positive feedback. Everyone's saying they love the trail. Everyone's saying that they enjoyed the trail. Everyone talking about how good it was. Everyone talking about the rain coming down and making the trail even better. So I think that's awesome. I think that's a testament to itself right there. But really cool to be back at the Dragons Back National Enduro. There's been rumblings and bumblings about talking about going back next year, so maybe that'll be on the docket for next year as well. A lot of posts saying that it's their favorite place to ride, so it was pretty cool to see that feedback and everything coming out of it. Now, The last time that we were there, it was 2018, like I mentioned, and it was none other than the current reigning defending series champion. And oh, by the way, he won the race again this past weekend. Grant Baylor. Grant Baylor in 2018 won the Dragons Back National Enduro, got one of the coolest trophies that I've ever seen. You probably saw some pictures of it in the past. If you haven't, I suggest you go and do some digging, do some scrolling, and find it, because that thing was sick. It was a giant dragon's head made out of metal. So there's a local artist. He was actually on hand this weekend as well, but he made this thing from scratch, and it was this big dragon head that was huge. It took up like a whole little table that they had it sitting on. But Grant was the last one to win that in 2018. He comes back, leads the whole day this past weekend. He won the first two tests, and he never let go of the lead after that. So he led the whole day, ended up getting the win, and taking the win at the Dragons Back once again. Now this time, it was also a pretty cool trophy. It was a handmade sword by the guy that made the Dragon. Well, this time he made a sword. And then the Pro Women and Pro 2 classes, they got like a knight helmet that was also pretty damn cool. But it was ironic that Grant Baylor won the last Dragons Back, and then he won this most recent Dragons Back. Now, he got the dragon last time, he got the sword this time. I think it might have worked out better if he got the sword back in 2018, you know what I mean? Got to train with it a little bit, swinging around. Maybe use that thing to cut some trails. Maybe use it to shotgun a couple beers, you don't know. But it got him some practice. That way when he won the dragon's head, he was ready to take that thing out and slay the thing with the sword. But that's besides the point. That dragon's been wreaking havoc on his dad's house. He told me he just got it from his dad's house not too long ago, actually. But it's been wreaking havoc out there. But now he's got a sword, so hopefully he can tame that dragon. But, yeah, long rant to get at a very complex dad joke right there. But hopefully you appreciated it. But, yeah, Grant Baylor takes the win, grabs the first two test wins, third place in Test 3, and then grabs the win in Test 4 and also the win in Test 6. So out of 6 tests of racing for the day, Grant Baylor won 4 of them. He's on that KLM Milwaukee Tools gas, and it looks like it is working for him. As we mentioned, he is the reigning and defending series champion. He's gotten second place at the first 2 rounds of the season to big brother Stu Baylor. This time he flips the roles, puts Stu back in second place on that Ampro factory Yamaha. Now, they did keep it close all day long. Stu was right there. And one thing that if you pay attention to any national enduros, you will learn very quickly that in today's day and age, they are run by the Baylor boys out of South Carolina. I know Grant, I'm pretty sure he's in Maryland now. I don't think he's still in South Carolina, but originally from South Carolina, these Baylor boys have these national enduros figured out. Stu is a 4-time national enduro champion. Grant just won the national championship last year, and I think Grant's only 24. And, I mean, he's been winning these things for years. And now Stu and Grant go back and forth, it seems like every single damn race. And, yeah, it's pretty remarkable to see how good they both, or how much, rather, they excel at this format of racing. Ben Kelly putting together a great ride as well. He ends up grabbing that final podium position in third place, only 11 seconds back from Stu. So Stu 16 seconds off of Grant Baylor's pace at the end of 6 tests of racing, and Ben Kelly just 11 seconds right behind him. So Ben Kelly keeping everyone honest out there throughout the weekend. Ben actually got second place on every excuse me. Ben Kelly got second place on every test but 2. So he gets third place in test 1 and third place in test 6. Everything else in the middle was a second place sandwich that he was able to do. So consistent times throughout the day, but just gave up a little bit too much to Stu there in the first test and the last test, and that puts him in third place. Now, at the last round, we saw Josh Toth on the podium. He ends up in 4th place this weekend with Craig DeLong in 5th and Bollinger in 6th. place overall and in that NE Pro 1 class. That brings us to our next point, our next rider, who we were able to catch up with on the last episode of OTP Tuesdays that we did, Jesse Ansley. We learned in that episode, sitting down and talking with him, that National Enduro was not on the docket. It was not on his radar. It was not in his 2021 plans to race the National Enduro Series. But the season's coming up. Obviously, he's got focus elsewhere in other series. And he says, you know what? Sumter National Enduro is coming up. I'm pretty close by. Let's go up there and do some testing. He goes up to Sumter, wins the damn thing. And these are Jesse's words. These aren't my words. These are Jesse's words. You can listen to his interview from the last show. But he says, hey, I won the first one. Might as well go to round 2, see what happens. He goes to round 2. He wins round 2. Well, hell, I won the first 2. Let's show up at round 3, see what happens. He shows up at round 3. He wins Pro 2 again. So Jesse Ansley, the only unbeaten pro class rider on the season. He makes it 3 for 3, and I can only assume that we're going to see him at the 4th round down in Georgia. I mean, if you're on a hot streak, you're on a hot streak, and I would imagine that Jesse Ansley is going to keep it going. I would say until he loses, but I mean, even if he doesn't get first place at one, he's sitting in a really good spot in winning the first 3 in a row. So Jesse Ansley goes out there 7th place overall, 1st place in Pro 2, and then Ben Nelko. He is one, we got to get on the podcast, we got to talk to him, we got to see what's going on. He is putting down burner times. He takes some test wins on the weekend. He ends up getting 2nd place. Now, his first test of the day. Now, keep in mind, I was out on a bike kind of setting up stuff, so setting up these checkpoints, so I didn't get a chance to watch the racing as closely as I wanted to. But I just saw after the first couple tests that he was he won in the top 3. I don't remember where he was at, but I was just kind of keeping an eye on it. And then at the end of the day, I saw that he got 2nd place. So he was putting down burners out there to get back into it. We watched him lead at round number 2 in Louisiana, and then ended up having some issues that he ran into, and I don't think he completed that, or he definitely didn't complete that race. But he is putting it together. He's won one of these things before last year, and he's a contender. He's a contender at National Enduro. He's a contender at GNCC. He's really just putting all this together. We saw him make that transition from motocross into the off-road world scene. He is gelling with that bike, and he's making it happen, so that is definitely cool to see. I know he's been down there training with Stu Baylor and living with Stu Baylor, and that is a unique program within itself if you follow any of them on social media, but, I mean, it works. Stu has won just about every single race that he has lined up to since coming back from his knee surgery last year after the summer break, and it's been an interesting thing to watch. But we've seen Ben spending a lot of time down there with Stu. How much is that playing into his program? That's something I'd like to find out about. So maybe we'll have Ben Nelko on here before too long, but no doubt he's got to be happy to see the results that he's getting and just see him getting better and better each week. And yeah, I think he is one small thing away from figuring it out and really being up there at all these events that he goes to. Jonathan Johnson, same exact way. Jonathan Johnson is a perfect on the season at the GNCCs for an XC3 rider, and he gets 3rd place this past weekend at the National Enduro. So Jonathan Johnson, no stranger to the podium at these National Enduros, and no stranger to the podium wherever he goes, whether it's Mid-East races, taking all those wins, and XC3 taking all those wins by minutes. Jonathan Johnson is definitely one to keep an eye out for. Right now he's going back and forth between that 125 and that 250F on that Magna 1 Motorsports Husqvarna. So it's cool to see him hop back and forth between the two and find success in both of them. My dog's head is like completely crooked and underneath the skateboard right now, but she's dead asleep and loving life. But anyway, so yeah, Jonathan Johnson, he is on a tear. One thing about Jonathan, so he's in Landrum, South Carolina, and I talked to him at a lot of the races this year, And we had him on the podcast to start the year off. So a few episodes ago, Jonathan was on, and we kind of talked to him, and he said the goal is to win everything that he lines up to. And that is the mentality that he brings into every single race that he goes to. And I overheard him talking with the Moose guy when we were doing the podiums, and the guy congratulated him on third, and Johnny was pretty pissed off about third. And he said he let himself down. And then I forget what the Moose guy said. The Moose guy said something back, and then Jonathan just looked right at him and said, "We let everyone down." And that just really, it made me pause for a minute. I didn't say anything to Johnny in the moment, but just looking at him is like, man, you've been on a tear this year. You've been winning every XC3 race that you go to. You've been getting on national enduro podiums. You've been winning Mid-East races. And for him to come away with a podium at a national event with some very tough competition, and the leading thought on his mind is that he let everyone down. I mean, one, that's the mentality that you have to be successful in this sport. I get that. Especially if you're trying to do it for a living, being a professional racer, being in these pro classes, that's the mentality you have to have. But I guess it was the way that he said it. There's a lot of things that people say that you can kind of decipher whether they mean it or whether they're saying it because they either feel like that's what they need to say to make sponsors happy, to make whoever happy, to give that mindset across. But when he said it, it kind of made me stop. Because like I said, I was just standing there and I heard it. And it made me stop for a minute because that was a genuine answer out of Jonathan Johnson's mouth. He really feels like he let everyone down by not winning that race. And to go out there and have that success, to be jumping back and forth between bikes. I don't know his practice bike situation. I don't know what he's doing for training. But for him to go back and forth between those bikes and do the riding that he does and go out there and be making the name for himself that he does, I think it's damn impressive. And I think he's on a roll this year. So when I heard him say that, I was like, damn. Like, I understand it, but also there is a lot of success in that. There is a lot of hard work in that. There's a lot of recognition in that. And I'd be willing to bet that if you went over to anyone under that Magna One Motorsports tent and asked them if Jonathan Johnson has ever let them down, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that could say yes to that question. But, I mean, that's how I truly think that he felt about that. And, yeah, I don't know. It's just a moment where you sit there and look at it and realize how real this is. And I don't know. I didn't really have a plan to go on that. It just kind of popped in my mind and just wanted to speak on it. But, yeah. Looking down in the rest of our Pro 2 class, last round we saw Will Sievenpiper on the podium. I saw him sign up, said, "Hey man, what you think? You gonna keep getting on these podiums?" He said, "No, we're searching for wins." He ended up getting fourth place on the weekend as well, 4 seconds behind Johnny. So Johnny 9 seconds back off of Ben Nelko. Will Sievenpiper only 4 seconds off of Jonathan Johnson and that Pro 2 podium. Steve Nicholas rounded out your top 5 in the Pro 2 class. If I'm not mistaken, this is one of those catch-22s that I get caught up in. If I'm not mistaken, Steve Nicholas is an Ichthus CBD rider as well. Now, I almost didn't want to say that because if I'm wrong, I'm going to look stupid. But I'm pretty sure he is. I'm just going to say that he is. So he'll have a discount code too if you want to check him out. Steve Nicholas, 5th place in that Pro 2 class. Sorry for a spillage of my thoughts right there. But, yeah, that was your Pro 2 class. We'll move down to our Women's Elite class or our Women's Pro class. We saw our reigning defending champion, Mackenzie Tricker, 2-time National Enduro champion. She was still recovering from a knee surgery at round 1 at the Sumter National Enduro. She jumped on her bike. She rode one test just to kind of score some points and get her on the board. for that round. She was not cleared to ride yet, but she did make it through one test of racing. We saw her come out at Louisiana. Due to her result at round number 1, she didn't get the best starting row at row number 2. It was also conditions that were unfavorable. As we mentioned, it was like 4 inches of rain that we got Friday night. Kind of salvaged the track on Saturday, went racing on Sunday, and the track got the best of Mackenzie Tricker at that round. She did not get on the podium. I think she got 4th place, if I'm not mistaken, but she didn't get on the podium, so she's been a little upset about that. I know she has been looking to rebound from that as a 2-time champion. She has a lot riding on this National Enduro Championship, and I'm sure that is something that she wants to keep and keep rolling. So we saw her come back out wanting to have a good race, needing to have a good race. She comes out on her Enduro Engineering KTM and gets the win. Grabs the win in three, if I'm not mistaken, 3 of the 6 tests, and ends up getting the overall win for the weekend. And Shelby Turner, who we watched win rounds number 1 and 2, gets 2nd place behind Mackenzie Tricker, just about 30 seconds behind, and then Rachel Goodish will round out your women's elite podium. So those are some battles that I think are going to come down to the wire between those. Brooke Cosner, we saw her on the podium at round number 2. I think this battle between the women's elite classes are just now getting heated up. We are only 3 rounds in. We've had 2 different winners, and we've had the podium positions change back and forth every single time in those 3 rounds so far. So that is a battle that I think is going to come down to the wire. But Mackenzie Tricker, no doubt, has to be feeling good about returning to the middle spot of the podium there at the National Enduros. Want to point out real quick, Nathan Rector was the top amateur overall. So when you look at the overall results, you kind of go through it, you see all your pro riders, and then you see your first double-A rider, Nathan Rector, gets 14th place overall and takes the win in the double-A class. Just 14 seconds behind him was Tanner Whipple, who gets 15th overall and 2nd place in the double-A class. And joining us out for some racing was Brad Bakken. So it was cool to see him out there. His parents, both of his parents, were actually working some of the checks throughout the day, and then Brad was out there riding and racing with us, so it was cool to see him back out there, and he gets 3rd place in that double-A class. But another rider that I want to point out and that I want to talk about on here, this year to the National Enduros, there was a new class added. It is called the Enduro Features class. Now, currently at National Enduros, there is not a youth division, and a lot of that is because a lot of these National Enduros, you actually have to travel across a public roadway. This past weekend, we had to travel across a public roadway. That being said, youth riders that are not of age to drive on a public roadway in anything cannot ride an off-road motorcycle across a public roadway. In lieu of that, there has been the creation of a class called the Enduro Futures class. And that is where a big-wheeled Super Mini is allowed to compete in 4 of the 6 tests. Now, if you are new to the National Enduro Series, C riders get scored on 4 tests, B riders and women's elite riders get scored on 5 of the 6 tests, and then A and pro riders get scored on all 6 tests. So the Enduro Features are running the same amount of classes as the C-class riders, which is 4. Now, that is important because if you look at the winner of the Enduro Futures class, it is Cole Forbes. To find Cole Forbes' name, you have to scroll all the way down into the 400s overall. Now, there were 750 riders, and Cole is in the 400s overall. You say, well, what's impressive about that? He's on a mini bike, and he got 400th overall. That's not worth talking about on a podcast. Keep in mind, if you look at everybody that was scored for 4 tests, Cole is number 1 of those folks by a long shot. But more interesting than that, if you scroll over and look at Cole Forbes' test times, you'll see that they are in the mid to late 20s overall. So on live laps, you can see your class times per test and you can see your overall times per test. If you look at Cole, he is running in the late 20s overall. Now, once again, you say, all right, what's the big deal about that? Let me just go through 25 to 30 overall in the final results. 25, Dustin Clauter, Pro 2 rider. Mike McGinnis, 26th, Pro 2 rider. Damon Rummel, 27th, Double A. Grady Faint, 250A, second place in class, 28th place overall. Mitchell Owenby, 250A, third place in class, 29th overall. Gavin Sievenpiper, Open A, winner. Winner of Open A, 30th place overall. These are two pro riders, the 250A podium, and the Open A winner. That's who Cole Forbes is running similar times with on a freaking super mini. He's on a mini bike. He races the youth class at GNCC, and he's on a mini bike. And he's running those times. So let's just say that he stays consistent through those last two tests and does similar times. He's winning Open A. He's getting on the podium in 250A and he's winning Open A. On a mini bike, on a youth bike. That is impressive. Now, there's a lot in the rumor mill going on about Cole and what's going to be going on, and this kind of seems like some tryout years for him and being the next guy on KTM. So he'll be moving up from small bikes to big bikes, and right now, it's looking like he could be a guy. Now, this is the first year that we've seen KTM without the guy, Caleb Russell. Now they're looking for a guy. They got a guy in Ben Kelly. They got a guy in Josh Toth. Now it looks like they might have another guy coming up, Cole Forbes. I mean, if he can keep lighting the world on fire like he is, I mean, he's definitely going to be one to look out for. But yeah, as I was going through the overalls and kind of looking at that, it blew my mind that on a mini bike, those are the times that he's putting in. He's potentially winning Open A. He's potentially winning 250A. If he's in contention and goes a little bit faster, he's potentially winning Open A on a mini bike. So I just thought that was pretty cool to see that in there. And that is also a great thing about that Enduro's Futures class, that it allows him to get out there on these tracks and get out there and ride the same tracks that everybody else is riding and compare his test times and see where he's at on that A-level skill set or with those A-level riders. So no doubt it's cool for him to be able to see that. But yeah, so that was the National Enduro in a nutshell, if you will. I've had an absolute blast out there helping out with these things. We kind of mentioned it, went into it a little bit on the last podcast. I'm sure if you follow National Enduro, you've seen the announcements about this being Alan Rant's farewell tour is what he called it, and then comes back out and says, you know what, we're going to keep this thing rolling. I think NEPG has done an amazing job with that series and built it into what it is now. So it's really cool to be able to keep that NEPG legacy going and to keep things going the way that they have been going. And I'm absolutely honored to be a part of that and helping out with that NEPG crew going forward and keeping those races going on. So like I mentioned, getting my feet wet now, being able to hang out and kind of learn from them and the way that they do it and the way that Alan has developed this has been an experience unlike anything else that I can explain. It's an opportunity that I couldn't be any more grateful for. And it's such an excellent opportunity to learn from someone with so much knowledge and that has done this and built this. And it's cool to be able to go to the rest of these rounds and learn directly from Alan, learn directly from Logan, learn directly from Josh, learn directly from Mark Hyde, and see how these things go and how to set them up from every aspect of it, from getting the pit set up to signing people up to how the transponders work to setting up the scoring to pre-riding the tracks. It's really been a good time. But I was sitting there thinking, at the end of each day, we all kind of, our little NEPG crew goes out to dinner. Now, you've heard me mention Mark Hyde. Mark Hyde is KTM rep. He does stuff with, they're going to crucify me. They're going to be listening to this right now. They're going to crucify me for not knowing this. I think it's the Orange Brigade? Team Orange Brigade? Something like that. Anyway, that's what Mark Hyde does. So, he's up there in KTM, and he's just KTM rep. They come out, they help out. Ben, who does the demo rides and all that kind of stuff, he comes out and helps out as well, but completely on their own. They just do it because they love the sport. But what I'm getting at is we kind of all go out to eat at the end of each day, and there hasn't been one meal that I've shared with that group that I haven't just sat at the end of the table in amazement. Like, just not even talking, just listening, just being a fly on the wall, hearing the stories of Alan Rant and Mark Hyde and just everything that they've been through. I mean, both of them have been KTM factory riders. Both of them have been winning national level races. Both of them have been to multiple ISDEs. Both of them have ridden dirt bikes in damn near every single state in the United States. They've ridden Romaniacs. They've ridden all over the damn world. Between the two of them, they have forgotten more about dirt bikes than I will ever learn about dirt bikes for the rest of my life. And I mean, it's to the point where, like, I've done extensive Google searches and just kind of tried to figure more out and learn more and ask questions. And it's to hear the stories of races in the past, of ISDEs in the past, of bike breakdowns in the past, of the way things used to be versus the way things are now. I think that's been my favorite part of this whole entire experience. Just kind of be a fly on the wall in those conversations. It's amazing. It's really cool to see. It's really cool to be able to ride with these folks. It's really cool to be learning from these folks and to see the passion that they have for riding. I've been a part of a lot of different series. I've held a lot of different roles in a lot of different series. And this one is by far my favorite because I see the genuineness of it. I see the passion for it. That's been one of my issues in the past, is where I feel like I am passionate about the sport. My life revolves around dirt bikes. I love dirt bikes. I love riding dirt bikes. I love racing dirt bikes. I love being involved. I love doing the podcast. Where I feel like in a lot of other series, that's not necessarily the case. Matter of fact, this is the first series I've helped out with where the people that I'm helping out actually ride a damn dirt bike. So I think, to me, that's one of my favorite aspects of it is it's finally a group of people that when we're not at a national enduro, I think everyone there is riding a dirt bike somewhere else. Even if it's not at a race, going out and riding, because that's what they enjoy and that's what they want to do. And to me, that means the world. And it's so much. It's a much better environment to be in a situation like that and share that same passion about it. And so I think it's really cool. I think it's a really cool opportunity, and I'm just thankful that I'm a part of it. And getting to meet such cool people and becoming friends with everyone in that group. And, I mean, you leave them looking forward to the next one. So I'm glad that we're still able to keep it going. I'm glad that NEPG will go on in the future. I'm glad we'll be able to bring a lot of the same crew back. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Alan Rant will not be away from the Enduros. He'll be out there racing, and he'll be out there riding, and looking forward to it. Super excited about it. But other than that, that's a lot of what is going on this weekend. We got the GNCC happening. It is at the John Penton. Next weekend will be the start of pro motocross. I got a guest coming on. We're going to talk about the whole Caleb Russell thing, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about it right now. But Caleb Russell, I have absolutely no idea how he is riding a motorcycle right now. He was even riding a motorcycle like a week or two ago. after completely shattering his jaw, getting his jaw wired shut, his eyes all swollen, all sorts of stuff going on with Caleb. He's already back on a bike and riding, and not only back on a bike and riding, he was back on a bike and racing. He raced a Loretta Lynn's area qualifier over this past weekend at Lake Sugartree, which was also in Virginia. From what I know about it, Crew, his son, qualified for Loretta's in the electric bike class, and Caleb went out there and got a couple moto wins as well. So not sure if... I doubt that he's trying to make it to Loretta's. He's got pro motocross going on, so he was probably just out there getting gate drops, getting the adrenaline going, testing himself, testing his body to see how it's going to react to the trauma that he's been through. But I'm just going to go out on a limb, and this is not coming from any information directly from Caleb, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if he is riding a dirt bike and he is racing a dirt bike last weekend, he will be lining up at pro motocross next weekend. If he's on a bike, if he's riding, if he's taking gate drops and he's racing, he has been looking forward to this opportunity for years and years and years. I think there's no way that we don't see Caleb Russell on a gate next weekend at Pro Motocross. So, like I said, we're going to have a guest on this week, kind of talk a little bit more in depth about that and some other storylines that are going on throughout the off-road world. But yeah, thank you guys for listening once again. I really appreciate you taking your time out to listen to this little podcast. This has been a lot of fun for me. I enjoy doing the podcast, and when life gets in the way and stuff comes up and miss a show here and there, it does mean the world going to the track, people talking to me, recognizing me, talking to me about it, and even straight up looking me in the eye and say, get your shit together. And I got that more times than I can count on my hands this past weekend for missing last week. So next Tuesday, we will be here, OTP Tuesdays on the Pipe Podcast. We're going to try to bring you one before that, but OTP Tuesdays, they are here to stay. Thank each and every single one of you for supporting the show in any way that you support it, whether it's listening here, whether it's subscribing, whether it's letting somebody know about it, whether it's putting a sticker on the back of your truck or on a dirt bike, buying a shirt, whatever it is. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I keep doing this for you guys, but also just to bring more of a spotlight to off-road, trying to get as much content, as much media as we can out there. These off-road riders are absolute freaks of nature, freak athletes, and what they do on a daily basis, risking life and limb, is worth absolutely more than I think the money that goes into it. But without the eyeballs, without the products moving, without people supporting the companies that support us as a sport, that's where the money comes from. So the whole idea behind this podcast and the whole idea behind all of this is to grow the sport, grow the names, grow the following, grow the fans, grow the products, and let's see this whole thing take off. Last year was the first year that the AMA saw off-road racing participants surpass motocross racing participants, and I think that is a trend that we're going to continue to see rising, and I think we're going to continue to see off-road racing in America grow more and more and more, and I couldn't be more excited for it. So, thank you all for being a part of it. Thank you all for listening to this. Maybe next week I'll have a name for my dog. Right now it's been 2 days. I have no idea what to name this damn dog sitting next to me, but she is pretty adorable. You'll see her at some races soon. Call her something. She might look, because right now she don't even know what her name is, so she might answer to anything. Until then, be safe, have fun. We'll see you next time.